On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, our chief Las Vegas correspondent has safely returned from the desert, and she's here to talk all about her impressions of the Toronto Raptors at Summer League. It's Katie Heindl back on the show. Let's go!
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Wednesday, July the 24th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the Hell website at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors, and you can join us, of course, in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. The link is in the description of the podcast. It's free to join. We would love to see you become part of our growing listener community over on the Discord. It's a great place to come hang out, talk ball, and not feel like you're getting screamed at all the time by freaks on the internet. What a wonderful thing. Come join us in the Discord. Of course, you can find the show for free on your audio app of choice. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. Much appreciated when you do that. You can also find us on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button, and next to that button is a little bell. You hit that little bell, and you are going to get a push notification every time the show goes live or premieres right to your device, so you never miss a second of that sweet off-season Locked On Raptors action, baby. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, and we get rolling here on your Wednesday episode of the show, welcoming back Katie Heindl, who was in the desert for a very long time, and I'm happy to see that she's back and safe and didn't get lost in the depths of Mandalay Bay. It is Katie. How the hell are you, Katie? It's great to have you back.
I'm good. It's great to be back. Not caught up on sleep. Still close to falling asleep every time I sit down somewhere. After 4 p.m., but really after 1 p.m. But I'm good. I didn't set foot in Mandalay Bay.
Wow. I mean, it is very far down the strip. Yeah. That's staying there. I've only been to Vegas one time, and I stayed there, and I was like, oh, end of the strip? This seems convenient. No, it means you have to walk extremely far to everything, over 10,000 footbridges in the blazing heat. Yeah. Good times. Vegas, stay in the middle of it. That's I guess the takeaway from today's episode. I don't know. Katie, we're gonna talk about Vegas. You were there for a while. You watched the Raptors and their summer league campaign unfold. They go 2-3. We tied up some of our bigger takeaways with Vivek on Monday, but you were there in person, and so you probably have a little bit more insight to pass along than either of myself or Vivek could do, just because we were watching condensed games at home on our laptops. But let's kind of just dive into the sort of general overall experience of it from the Raptors side of things. We saw they had their hotel room set up in the conference room of whatever hotel they were in. We saw them, doing the whole like camaraderie fun times thing that you hope to see around Summer League. Jamal Shead seemed like he was a really great dude to have kind of running the show down there. Lots of guys who figure to be part of the team, if not this season, then in the years to come. We talked a little bit before you went out to Vegas, Katie, 10,000 years ago about, how this felt a little bit like a Raptors Summer League roster of old, a little bit more sort of in line with that sort of peak era of 2016 through 18, where they really loaded up their Summer League rosters, had that shadow core building that they eventually had sort of take over the team after Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan and Kawhi Leonard moved on. Was that the case? Did it feel like a sort of classic Raptors Summer League? Yeah, they only went 2-3, and the injuries to Gradey Dick and Jonathan Mogbo cast a little bit of a cloud over things. But overall, did it feel like we thought it might when we were talking about it before you went down to Vegas?
Well, first they were in the win.
Okay.
Many NBA teams stay. I didn't make it over to their practice court, but I was there last year. I was glad to see they did it again. It is very impressive. 2 full courts. Gym setup as well. And I heard that
continental breakfast.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that's the least we could do. I also heard that other players that were in town were playing pickup. There was like a lot of pickup games going on those 2 courts, and they'd had like a winner and a loser's court. So that was probably through the first weekend, but I thought that was like a fun detail. Generally, to me, they did look really good. I'd say I'll preface that with saying they seem to taper off, probably due to like the injuries that you mentioned, maybe due to energy. But the first 2 games that I watched, definitely the first game that I watched, they had a lot of energy. Gradey Dick looked great. It was really funny. I said this on the radio when I did radio from Vegas that hopefully was coherent, but like looking up and down, Toronto has like the biggest traveling media contingent at Summer League of any other team, because there's like over 20 people from Toronto, some because of the USA Canada like preview game overlap, but generally most teams have 2 people, and that's generous. Usually 1, and they stay for 3 days and then they leave. And Toronto had like plus 20 for, I'd say, at least their first 3 games.
A full-on sicko brigade down there. I love it.
It basically just felt like being at Scotiabank, which was kind of a nice feeling in Vegas, honestly. But, you know, all I kept hearing was people being like, Gradey looks so big. He looks so good. Gradey looks good. He looks so strong. Like little murmurs from like everywhere around me. But it was true. He did, especially compared to last year, I think, when he had no idea, like a lot of the time, where he was in space or what it was he should be doing. He looked really trepidatious last year. And this year, you know, he was muscling his way into the basket. He was making some really phenomenal passes. Just a sense of timing seemed so improved to me. Obviously, you know, with that increased size, his strength and physicality, that's a given. But I think it also did something just for his confidence and general on-court presence. He was a real leader for the team. And I think I realized that's what had been missing from last year's Summer League team. As frenetic as Summer League basketball is, somebody needs to take charge. And he really did. So it's a bummer that he went out. Eric Kareen did report that he was walking around in Crocs after. So he's like, not that hurt. I think they were just playing it safe.
As you should with Summer League, right? Especially when he looks as good as he did in that first game. Like, why force it? Obviously, you'd like to see the team win more. And had he played, they probably would have won more. But I think you kind of saw what you wanted to see from Gradey. So, like, the whispers, the palpable sense of, ooh, Gradey looks good. Like, was that also something that the team was kind of letting kind of out of their sort of camp as well? Like, did it feel like there was a palpable sense of, okay, like Grady's kind of made the next step here? He now looks like he's 18 and a half, not 17 and a half. If we're going to continue this weird progression that they're doing with his, I
didn't talk to Darko. I saw Darko in the stands, but I didn't get a chance to chat with him. I mean, Jamma spoke pretty highly of him. And I think a lot of what they were running was meant to run through Gradey and, you know, have him like really high utilization, especially in those first 2 games. I think there is a sense, I would say, even the silver lining, not of him being injured, but of them being careful to have him sit out, is that there isn't this feeling like, oh shoot, we really, really needed him in these last games for his own developmental trajectory. Like it felt like they were fairly confident that he'd achieved that already. And he'd been working, I mean, like, to be fair, he'd been working out in Toronto with IQ and a few other people before, like, I think he had like a month before they went to Vegas. So they know, I think there's like a very clear sense they know what he's capable of. And it was just more of just like a showing up for the rest of the world sort of moment.
Did you get an inclination that he is in fact going to start going into the season? It feels like that's like the one sort of roster battle, position battle thing that's going to dominate our lives for the next couple of months here. I think I've just kind of put him in almost in pen just to start, because shooting good, and if he can shoot good, then that's helpful for all the other players in that lineup. Is there a sense that there's maybe a decision coming there? You know, not that they're going to go and outwardly say Grady's our starter in the middle of July, but is there a sense that's maybe just kind of like the chalk pick if you're handicapping the race to be the starting 2 guard?
It feels like it, though I will say, and I had this conversation with a few people, given how broad that Summer League roster was and how many guys are now going to look at time either with the Raptors or certainly with 905 on 2 ways. It feels like there's going to be a lot of jockeying around. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I think that's sort of the nature of it, is like, given Gary's gone and looking at the roster construction as it is now, a lot of them are being developed, I think, with the anticipation that they're going to play real NBA minutes this season. Certainly your starters look a bit more locked in than they did in, when the team finished the season.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's still going to be some roster movement, honestly.
I mean, they have that roster spot, and it's not like the free agent class is rich with options at the moment, but there's still Tyus Jones out there. There's still other guys out there who are not Tyus Jones. Isaac Okoro's out there, whatever. It felt, I think, before the Vezenkov thing that maybe things were pretty static and it was just going to be the team. But now that extra roster spot does kind of open things up to maybe a late summer move here, changing up the mix a little bit. But we're going to go back on the other side, Katie. We're going to continue talking about Vegas. Want to get into some of your impressions of the other rookies that the Raptors rolled out. Jamal Shead, a personal favorite of mine. Jonathan Mogbo, whose time was cut short, unfortunately, due to a back thing, I believe. We'll get into Jacoby Walter and some dudes who stood out for you. We'll do that coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time, the single best place to buy tickets for the sports, concerts, theater, and whatever events you want to go to all summer long. I went to the Blue Jays game last night, and Game Time was the way I bought my tickets, and I got super cheap tickets out in the brand newly constructed outfield seats. It was beautiful. I was right next to the bullpen, great views. It was a lovely time, and Game Time got me those seats for very, very affordable prices. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on Game Time actually go down closer to as it gets closer to first pitch, which is a beautiful thing as well. And all the wonderful features that are on Game Time as well, from zone deals, flash deals, seat views, so you get a panoramic view of your seat before you buy. It's a beautiful thing. Go check out Game Time, and of course, they have perfect Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the entire ticketing industry. It's all there. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDINNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDINNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We continue on here as I'm scared. There's a thunderstorm going on outside, and it's raining sideways.
It just got so dark where
it really did. This is horrifying. We to put the cushions away. It's raining real hard. Anyway, was not raining hard. I guess it did rain a little bit in Vegas, which is weird. We're not here to talk about meteorology, though. We're here to talk about Toronto Raptors players making it rain from outside and other things. I don't know, Katie. Guys who stood out. Let's get to the cast of rookies who everyone had their eyes on. Jamal Shead, Jacoby Walter, Ulrich Chomche, Jonathan Mogbo, again, only played 1.5 games. It was a bummer to not see him play the full stretch of the summer league. But of the rookies coming in, Katie, who would you say sort of caught your eye the most, who popped the most in their fledgling games wearing Toronto Raptors colors?
I think so the pop and stood out are different for me. So I'll say Chomche stood out for me, though he's not popping yet. But there's something in his kind of his touch. And are you okay?
There was a big thunder. Sorry, I'm good.
You're like my
Apparently
dog.
I'm a dog.
But I thought he had a very he looks pretty green. He does look like that trepidation I mentioned Gradey had last summer league. You could see that really with him. He didn't necessarily know where he was supposed to be or when he was supposed to be there. But Will Lou interviewed him, and I also forgot this, but he was a farmer only a few years ago.
Yeah,
he was not playing basketball. So I think given that, I see the flashes are, and I think I see the willingness to get there. Also, in terms of builds and body types, he does sort of look like a Giannis-esque, they're not yet, of course, but just the way, I think just the way he could develop. And he had some pretty good, two-way, a little bit of a two-way, but definitely looked a bit too shy right now, but I'm really curious. Something about watching him, it just sparked some interest in me. He's it's a pretty striking guy to look at, the way he moves so fluidly at his size. And
I want to play a quick game with you, Katie. I played it with Vivek on Monday. As the thunder gets louder, the podcast is coming to an end. So I've asked Vivek on Monday, did you watch the Heat game that the Raptors played?
I was down in the tunnels interviewing some people, but when I came up, they were 7-30 something.
Yeah. Real good game that the Raptors played in that one. But at the end, near the end of it, Ulrich Chomche had a two-way sequence where he grabbed a defensive rebound, pushed it up himself, threw a beautiful little bounce pass to a guy cutting in from the wing, got kicked to the corner. What sound did you make when that happened? Because Vivek and I already did our onomatopoeias for what we did in reaction to that play. I wanted to hear what you thought, because to me, that was like the single greatest flash of Summer League for me, was an on-the-move Ulrich Chomche bounce pass.
I mean, it was probably some of the noises I was making in his first game, which was just like, oh, like
I like it. Yeah. Understated.
Yeah. I'm not trying to place too much pressure on this guy, but I'm really curious to see what he can do. And I get it. Not to be like, I see the vision, that the whole front office had, but I mean that in that I don't have that vision all of the time. But with him, there's something. I think in terms of who was popping and who stood out that way, Shead definitely did. Like, he's so athletic, he's super quick. He was going in for some real like hero Summer League sequences of just rushing the basket. He was really throwing his body around, especially in that first game. I think like I got a video of him on the last possession when he kind of ran. He like pummeled in for a layup, ran, and then like wiped out right at my feet. And it was Chomche who came over and like lifted him up and was screaming. But I don't know, that kind of stuff is great, right? These like Hail Mary moves. And he was really willing to do that and just kind of run for out of bound balls and just be everywhere that they needed him to be. So I can definitely see the tenaciousness in someone like him. And also frame wise, why they'd want to go for, I don't know, flashes of Kyle Lowry, flashes of Fred VanVleet, right? Yeah.
They have a type. It's worked for them in the past. Why fix what ain't broke, right? Yeah. I mean, as someone who loves just a finger on the pulse, sort of floor general, feeding everybody, setting everybody up with silver platters type of point guard, I'm very in on the Jamal Shead thing. Obviously, the shooting has to come along, but the flashes in Summer League and the on-ball defense, Katie, my God, it's everything that was sold to us and maybe then some. And really excited to see that come into form. And, whether he plays in the NBA out of the gate, I'm a little doubtful. I think he probably needs some time in the G League just to sort of get those reps as the lead guy in a pro system. But I don't think it's out of the question that he's one of these second round guys who by the middle of the season, we're kind of looking around and saying, like, why is he not playing at the NBA level? Let's get him in here, kind of following maybe the Norman Powell track if we're going, to sort of tie things to former Raptors successes of old. Well, I want to ask you about Jonathan Mogbo a little bit. We didn't get to see him a ton. Played very sparingly in the game in a quarter he played or whatever it was. I thought showed some interesting stuff with the ball in his hands and playmaking and vision, and the rebounding is obvious. What were your impressions of Jonathan Mogbo in the brief time we saw? And more so just sort of what are people saying about him in the Raptors sort of vein? And what do you expect their role for him is going to be as early as this year? Because he really does kind of have a physical set of skills and dimensions that no one else on the roster does. It feels like there's maybe going to be a role for him somewhere in the NBA this season. I'm curious what the sort of vibe was on Mogbo this at Summer League down there.
My sense is the team really likes him, especially the way Jama talks about him. I think the way he looked understated in games was by design, because you got to think too, for the guys who are going to be on your team and be the best, or maybe that you're putting the most expectation on, a big part of what they're doing has to be restraint, right? As much as like showing up and just trying to play hero basketball. And I think you and I talked about before I left, like the system that they're going to want to introduce with this team. And I think what they tried to do in Vegas was because it's Jama. So he has such like a storied knowledge.
I think it's hailing now.
Oh no!
There's projectiles hitting the window.
He has such a storied knowledge of the team in all different stages of its development. But now, like the things he's going to try and implement, especially guys with like Rick Gradey, who's already been on the parent team, but like Mogbo, who I think they want to see move along up to the Raptors, is you have to play unselfishly. You got to play as part of a team. You need to fit a very specific kind of characteristic of Raptors like basketball DNA. And I think they were working him toward that. Him being out does stink. But again, I don't think it's anything to be too worried about. But I think for him, restraint, like seeing his restraint, and seeing more of his decision making, that's what's going to get him farther than him showing up in Summer League. Like Summer League is definitely for coming in and trying to just like blow the roof off. But that's also if you're trying to maybe get signed on a different team,
sure,
or like make it to a roster somewhere, which I also think some guys on the Raptors roster were doing. To be honest with you, but he's not. And I think that's probably because there's been a lot of openness from the franchise of the expectations for him and where they see him down the road.
Yeah, I am super intrigued by Mogbo as like a connective piece type guy. And I think in particular, I do think the fit with Scotty Barnes is interesting. I think they kind of have a little bit of overlap in terms of, obviously Scotty's just like a better player at this point, but they have overlap in terms of the things they do well, just like the ball handling and the sort of ball skill at that size. It's a rare thing to find. I'm so excited, Katie, to watch Emmanuel Quickly and Jonathan Mogbo work in concert with one another. I think those two guys' skill sets could mesh beautifully. And I think Mogbo has like the real upside of like a true short roll creator that could be sort of one of those guys who helps Quickly himself evolve as a guy who's able to handle double teams and pass out of that stuff and sort of refine the playmaking elements of his game. Again, this is a lot to heap on a guy who's going to be a rookie as a second rounder. This is more of a longer term thing down the line that I'm sort of envisioning here. But you can see the sort of just the innate basketball sensibilities of Jonathan Mogbo just in the very few minutes we got to see him play. I'm quite into it. Katie, we'll come back on the other side, get some final thoughts from Summer League for you, some parting shots, if you will. And then we're going to talk about a little trip the Raptors are taking. Field trip to Spain, anybody? I really hope I can go and cover this. Locked On, send me, please. We will get to that coming up and what it might mean for the Raptors going into a new season coming up in just 1 second. Back at it here, rounding things out with Katie Heindl of Basketball Feelings. A reminder, Locked On Sports Today 24/7 is your all-day streaming channel with the Locked On shows all day long, covering all the biggest stories in sports from the off-season goings on in the NHL, MLB. That season's going on. Never mind. NHL, NBA, NFL. MLB season trudging along as it is. The Olympics will probably have some coverage over there. The WNBA season's rolling strong. It's all being covered over on Locked On Sports Today 24/7. Put it on and keep it on all day long, please. Okay, let's dive in. Katie, your final parting shots on Summer League. Anything we missed here? Anything, an experience you saw? What's the weirdest thing you saw in Vegas? We could get into that as well. But as far as Raptors stuff, any last lingering thoughts here before we get into field trip to Spain?
Yeah, I was kind of disappointed, and like Summer League disappointed, so not full throttle, but like I want to know what Ochai Agbaji is doing, and I think maybe I know there is a plan. I won't say maybe there is a plan, but I think again, like seeing him not necessarily, is your roof leaking?
I think my roof is leaking. That's bad.
Oh, no.
This doesn't seem good. Huh. All right, let's keep podcasting.
Okay, we'll wrap it up quickly. It's just, I would have thought, like, for the other guys that have come along since last time they were here in Vegas, he hasn't quite shown to be there yet. And I don't know. I was chatting with okay.
Yeah. I've just put my water cup to catch some water.
Okay. I was chatting with some like Nuggets people, and like they were kind of like, how's he looking? It's like, oh, when I said, they're like, oh no, like that's sort of the same as he looked when he was in Denver. So I don't know. Maybe that's just like a usage thing. The team's still trying to figure out where they want to put him. But there are just times where I think you could see his interest and engagement wane in the course of a quarter.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of, that just makes me curious.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big stretch for Ochai Agbaji, and I think the competition he's going to have for minutes is going to be pretty fierce. And I don't know if he laid the greatest groundwork going into the season with his summer league performance. You would hope that he can sort it out. Like he seems like a super easy guy to root for. Like you want the best for him, but it's a challenge when you're just not performing. And he didn't really perform down the stretch of last season. The summer league run for him was pretty discouraging. It's not to write the guy off entirely, but there's a real chance here that he's kind of fighting for his NBA life this coming season. And you would hope that he's able to kind of round into form a little more effectively than he was able to at Summer League. Katie, let's quickly round. Actually, no, I did mean to ask. I want to get the actual answer. What is the weirdest thing you saw in Summer League? Just like anything that you want. It's Vegas, right? There's weird things happening all the time. What was the weirdest thing you came across?
I feel like my weirdness was a little bit tame this year. I met Daryl Morey in the breezeway between buildings. Both of us just getting like blasted by the heat, and he was weirdly nice. So, you know. And then at one point I was pinned in this back corral area when the games were changing over and players were getting off and others were getting on in the small gym. And I realized I was beside a huge person, and I like looked up and was like staring for such a long time until I'm like, oh, that's Udonis Haslem. Trapped right beside me. But none of those were weird. They were maybe my brain being like a couple beats behind, which is what's going to happen in Vegas.
So nothing wild on the strip, no crazy people on stilts.
No, it was pretty
nonsense.
Tame, thankfully. Granted, I didn't really hit the strip that much. The thing I hated the most was one night downtown. I don't know, like this is like a big thing because I definitely saw two separate ones. There was like kids in this giant gorilla costume dancing, and it was like really lifelike. Like gorilla, not like Suns gorilla. Oh, the weirdest thing was that the Suns gorilla was there for so many of the Suns games, and I was like, this seems so dumb. Who was I with? I think it was Keith Parrish, who was like, it's weird that he hasn't been canceled yet, and I agree. But there was just a full-on like really lifelike gorilla costume, two of them dancing on Fremont, and then at one point, I guess the people in them were leaving, and I know they were kids because a young kid emerged and folded the entire suit within seconds into a tiny backpack. And I have to say the suit was like 8 feet tall. So I don't know. That was a bit weird.
This is what I was looking for, Katie. I don't care about Daryl Morey being hot. This is the stuff we're after. Freaks in gorilla costumes in 120-degree heat. Yeah, that seems unpleasant. Last thing, Katie, little news that feels pertinent to our interests as people who like Marc Gasol. The Toronto Raptors are going to Spain in mid-August to begin their preseason preparations. Usually, you come together around September-ish to start your season prep, and they usually go to Burnaby, BC for a little bit, or Victoria, or whatever they do up there. They're changing it up this year. The European influence of Darko Rajakovic seemingly being, impressed upon the entire organization. And frankly, I love it. I think yes, there's a little bit of a concern of going to a place with such a prominent nap culture. Is that really getting you in the groove for the season? Who's to say? But curious on your thoughts on this. I think it's kind of fun. And look, we've seen off-season team building get lionized before. I seem to recall the Raptors destroying everyone at the Drew League before the 22-23 season being the reason why they were going to go and win the championship. That didn't exactly pan out the way we had all hoped. So we can get a little carried away with this off-season camaraderie and team building stuff. But this seems like a fun little touch by the Raptors, and it can't be a bad thing, right?
Yeah, so these facilities, to my understanding, are the same that the NBPA uses to run its sanctuary program, which I actually wrote about last year when Denny Avaji got Steven Adams a ham for his birthday. And I had a lot of you can still find that on Time. I had a lot of great interviews with the guys there, but the sanctuary would now be in its third year. But this is a facility managed by Jose Calderon. So I think there's also that tie-in to the Raptors, obviously, is a reason why they wanted to go and do this. Oh no.
That was me. I just unplugged my light. This has been a disaster of a podcast.
I was like, you're losing power.
We're back. The audio listeners are going to be very confused by
it's
this
a mess.
episode.
You got to watch the video to accompany this one, everybody.
It's the summer. We're allowed to be a disaster.
From what I've seen, the facilities are gorgeous. It's in a part of Malaga that's like right in the south outside of Malaga, right on the ocean. Yeah, I don't know. Why wouldn't you want to have a camp there? It seems amazing. But I do like kind of the latent Raptors ties to Jose. I think being a reason as to why this seems a worthwhile venture. And to be honest with you, I feel like a lot of the guys on the team now being so young, I'm sure a lot of them have not traveled. And that's something that I think always surprises people to know that, a lot of these guys are coming right from programs that were like high school, AAU, college, right to the NBA. Like there's a really accelerated pipeline where you don't really get to go do a lot of international, unless you're an international player, like you haven't really spent that much time outside of the States. So I think that's also like a nice, cool bonus for them.
Absolutely. I think it's a great thing. And, building some chemistry before the season after a year where they had literally no runway to ever build chemistry or be in the same room as the other players on the team for longer than a month at a time. I think it's going to be really valuable. And I'm looking forward to seeing all the content that comes out of that. Well, speaking of content, Katie, will this apply to Summer Vacation Watch? Of course, you are the chief correspondent of Summer Vacation as well, and not just Vegas. Will this count at all as Summer Vacation if there are relaxed shots of the Raptors guys on beaches with sand, or does this all count as work now for them?
I mean, I'm sorry to break it to you, but there is no Summer Vacation Watch this year.
I know there's not this year, but you still are someone who keeps track of it.
It lives in me.
Yeah.
It lives in me. Yeah, I would say it still counts because a big part, at least I know a big part of the sanctuary are day trips. So it's like, do they like to swim? Do they like to fish? Do they want to go boating? Do they want to just go to the beach? Like they build that into the programming. This is different. This is team organized, but all of those things are available to them, I imagine, through the liaisons at the facility. So yeah, I want to see some guys chilling on the beach. Absolutely.
Emmanuel Quickly wearing linens, eating grapes. It's all we could ever ask for. Katie, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for hanging out for this maybe weirdest episode of Locked On Raptors of all time. I have to get a bigger bucket and probably spend a lot of money to fix my house. Great. Anyway, to help me do that, subscribe, follow, rate, review, tell a friend. It's a trying time over here at Locked On Raptors headquarters. Do you have anything you'd like to promote, Katie?
No.
Nothing out of Summer League? Do you want to promote?
I interviewed Derek Lively, and that'll be going up on SB at some point soon.
Excellent. All right. Also, Basketball Feelings, go check it out.
Yes.
And we will leave it there. Thank you so much for hanging out. We will talk to you again on Thursday. Jamar Hines will be along Friday. We're going to preview the Olympics with Oren Weisfeld. And then next week, we'll be talking about some Canada basketball, of course, as the Olympics will be underway. But we're also going to finally get to our Locked On Raptors over-unders season predictions review and determine who wins between myself, Vivek Jacob, and Sahal Abdi. Looking forward to that very much. We'll also determine the winner of the listener submission, which we got a whole lot of those at the start of the year. Looking forward to determining the winner there, who will win a pair of tickets to a game next season. And with that, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for hanging out. We'll talk to you again on Thursday with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Bye-bye. Well, at least I hit the shot. That's the weirdest thing that happened today.